Chucky here, hampered by his continual TV card saga,
has had a real issue trying to play my Segas and record them for your wonderful entertainment value.
Now, seeing as we refuse to emulate games,
Scotty has been nice enough to trade me for his old computer.
because I got a new toy.
And it's been great having the whole setup going again. But before we get into that, I've been nestling with an old friend of mine, the Nintendo Game Boy SP.
Now, they're yelling at us! They're yelling at the screen! Calm down.
Take a deep breath.
Before you start typing furiously nasty comments like, hiss, boo you traitors, how dare you, that's Nintendo, not Sega. Well, we've got news for you guys. Slow down.
It's a Sega game. It's a Sega game.
On the Nintendo.
On the Nintendo Game Boy. Astro Boy, Amiga Factor by Hitmaker and Treasure. Here we go. For those of you who have seen my 80s tag video, which
not many.
It's not that many.
At
Would
all.
like to be more. It's a
Don't bother.
response video I did to Nostalgiaholics.
It's a small fest. It really
Anyway,
is.
for those of you who have seen it, would have a fair idea that I grew up as quite a fan of Astro Boy. Now, I'm not a huge anime fan and my knowledge is limited, but I heard from a friend who shall remain nameless, you're America, that the maker of Astro Boy is somewhat like the Walt Disney of anime, and the creator of the now famous big eyes that are used so often in anime. Anyway, Astro Boy was introduced to me in the 80s with its dark storylines and really well-developed characters. But what separated this show from many others back then was how it could actually, the characters could actually suffer the consequences of their actions, which was almost unheard of back then.
Well, it was when you consider what was popular in those days too. Things like Masters of the Universe, for example.
Voltron didn't really move forward that much.
Even one of my favourites, Mask, was another one that just sort of didn't really have any sort of ongoing consequences for their actions.
Shows like Ninja Turtles really started picking that ball up and rolling with it, with an undertone storyline that would continue on.
But nowhere near as progressive as what Astro Boy was in its time. Now, for me personally, I wasn't a huge fan of Astro Boy as a kid, and that was mainly because my little sister was right into that show, and anything that she was attached to sort of had cuties that came with it. Now, when I got a little bit older and realised that just because she particularly liked something didn't mean that it came with cuties, I sort of started to get into it then. And to be honest with you, I would have to say, since then, it would have to be one of my all-time favourite shows. We still go back and watch it regularly. We catch up on full episodes that we can find on, even here, on YouTube. So, look guys, seriously, would strongly suggest you check it out. For us particularly, we both enjoy it the same way, but on completely different levels.
Enough about the show. Let's get on with the computer game.
When you see a game that's developed by Treasure, who have a remarkable history, and then having them team up with Sega's Hitmaker, you've really got to sit up and take notice.
Treasure, if you don't know, are well known for their classic Gunstar Heroes on the Mega Drive and Ikaruga on the Dreamcast, as well as many others.
Whereas Hitmaker, or AM3, my least favourite of the development teams we've mentioned in the post-2002 episode, would be best known for Crazy Taxi and Virtua Tennis. I mean, they have done some other top titles before they changed their name to Hitmaker, like Virtual On and Manx TT Superbike. So they might not have been an overly creative development team, but they made several fun games that have become classics over time. And to be honest, I was amazed at how perfect the combination was and how it resulted in a superb game.
Since I've moved house, I've been playing the Game Boy SP a lot, as I didn't have the available means to have my Segas set up. So I spent some time finishing games like the Zelda kart that has 4 swords on it and Link to the Past, which I really enjoyed playing as a kid but never finished it before. Plus I had other games like Mario & Luigi's RPG game and Midway Classics and F-Zero. And I've got to say that as good as a lot of these games were, it was Astro Boy's Amiga Factor that really stood out. Not only did it contain a full great story that was really reminiscent from the old TV show, but the gameplay is fantastic and really takes advantage of what the Game Boy Advance has to offer. Okay, so maybe the story switches quite a lot, but hey, so did the show. It's not a bad little system, the Game Boy SP. It took the technology that was used in the Game Boy Advance and made a few upgrades and one minor downgrade, if you ask me.
3 upgrades, 1 minor downgrade.
You know, you can't go wrong with that.
Yeah.
The first of the upgrades, of course, is the front light. How good is that? You can sit there on the train when you've got various light sources like bridges and tunnels and stuff like that, and you can still play the game quite comfortably. Unlike the Game Boy Color, where you're constantly going on a different angle and moving your head around and trying to
it around,
see the game, and there was always that shadow going over it. The screen refresh rate was way better than the Game Boy Color as well, plus more colours and all that stuff the Game Boy Advance had as well. Secondly, also makes a great torchlight too. I've got to point that out. When you're going on a phone call between 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning and you get the midnight munchies, so to speak, it's great to use as a torch to go out to the kitchen and find something to eat. Got to say, good thing.
Yeah, want to make your way to the job.
That too.
Yeah. Which, speaking of torches, power life, brings us to the next good point. The battery.
The battery is excellent.
Smartly designed little unit, doesn't protrude at all, with around about 10 hours of gameplay with the light on, about 18 hours with the light off, plenty of warning light before the thing will actually die on you, and here was the great thing for all that life, only 3-hour recharge time.
Which you didn't even need the full 3 hours. If you're going on a 3-hour train trip, you could just stick it in for half an hour, and it would definitely get that amount of power of time.
You'd get a couple of hours of gameplay easy out of it, wouldn't
so
you?
that was great advancement,
Fantastic for those long, arduous train trips. You want to get a couple of hours on the train. There's nothing worse than picking up your unit to get into a game and the thing dies half an hour into the trip, which the PSP Model 1 was notorious for.
Was it ever? And it was a huge advancement over the Game Boy Advance AA batteries, because, how much does AA batteries cost? And you're not going through them so quickly.
Just suck them up like you
having
wouldn't
rechargeable battery on it was a great idea.
Definite advancement.
Third thing was the flip-top screen, which is really good for me because I tend to play this system mostly in bed next to my partner while she's snoring her head off and I can't sleep. So it's great, I'm lying in bed and I don't have to tilt my head up like this, like I did with the Game Boy Advance, and I can play it in the dark with the front light. So yeah, it had a lot going for it,
Yep.
Also, it's good because it stops it from scratching as well, because you close the lid and doesn't have scratches.
Protect the screen.
Yeah. Put it in your pocket, no worries.
But the downfall.
Here we go.
The headphone jack.
Yes.
What headphone jack?
Everyone was thinking that too.
Exactly.
They're going, what about the headphone jack?
What about the headphone jack? Well, okay, now granted, you could buy an add-on accessory for the headphone. They're cheap, there's plenty of them out there, and they're relatively easy to find. But we were scratching our heads over the fact that why couldn't they just include it in the original package in the first place and be done with it? Or, even better still, put a headphone jack in it in the right place, like on the sides or at the front or somewhere where it's easily accessible.
So they're the 4 major things.
3 good, 1 not so good. But I think all in all, you weigh it up.
So now, after doing a deal with Chucky and being able to add the computer to the game room setup, we are now able to plug the GameCube into the system with its Game Boy Advance player. So let's fire that up and take a look at Astro Boy, Amiga Factor. To begin with, you're put through a training mission which teaches you all about your moves, like how to use your rocket feet, your finger laser and your guns that come out of your butt. All features are upgradable from meeting different characters. Each time you meet a new character, they offer you a new feeling or an emotion, which helps you develop your soul, and in turn you get another power-up for your character. Some characters are imperative to the storyline and therefore can't be hidden, but sometimes you have to search for the hidden characters to build your player up more.
Now, the enemies are pretty cool. A lot of the enemies you fight against have 3 sizes. But just because they're bigger doesn't always make them stronger or harder to defeat. Take these oversized gangsters for instance. Instead of them shooting you when they're at normal size, their guns go right over your head, so in turn it actually makes them easier to defeat.
Besides just going along beating everything up, you're also ported to some special shoot 'em up flying stages that become so much more fun once you've powered up your finger laser. I strongly recommend the game purely on these levels alone. They're not as common as the beat 'em up levels, but there's still plenty of them.
But it's the bosses where this game is at, and I tell you what, there is no shortage of them. With the first time I got to the final stages where you have to fight the final 5 bosses in a row, I was blown away. Not only were they challenging, but a lot of thought went into making sure that there was plenty of variety and action that always kept you on your toes while also being forced to think about how to beat them, which made them a definite standout.
So that brings me to replay value. And that's pretty good too. You see, once you have finished it on easy, it switches the story and makes you go through it a second time to pick up all the extras you missed that you needed to collect to build up your character. So you find yourself getting sucked in again as you're now more powerful and feel far more dominant like Astro would.
Overall, it was a great action game for us to play on the Game Boy Advance and the SP.
Yeah.
Look, we all know that there's obviously better games out there, especially if you want to really look around and try and find them.
There must be.
There's got to be. But with that said, with our limited experience on these particular units, we found it a fun game to play, highly pleasurable. I have to say it's got great replay value. Definitely, guys, we'd recommend check it out.
So yeah, if you have a DS Lite that can play Game Boy Advance games, or you find a cheap Game Boy Advance somewhere out there on the fly, yeah, it's a perfect example how gaming can be fun and simple and fun.
Yeah, it's just fun. Look, seriously, get yourself a copy of Astro Boy Mega Factor. You'll highly enjoy it. But look, with that said, on that note, we've got to shoot through, mate. Get it?
Good boy.
Shoot through.
Oh, I get it now! Oh.
We'll catch you all later on.
What'd you give me them for?
Because I felt like it. Get on with the show.